Three, two, and one. Welcome to another episode of Adam's Corner. And I'm Adam Long, your host, and we're so glad to have Gilbert Matthews back to join us for the third time. And the third time is the charm, as they say. He's here. He's the proprietor of the Retro Attic and the Awfully Awesome 80s streaming channels that are devoted to the lesser known pop hits from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, even some 50s occasionally, and some early 90s that you throw us there every now and then. But I'm going to get a little bit, let you talk a little bit first before we get into the subject at hand, which are forgotten gems of the 80s. We're going to let you talk a little bit about how you got into the station, how you got it up and running, where the genesis of the idea, just to catch people up if you want to do that.
Sure. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, so my name is Gilbert Matthews. Awfully Awesome 80s is a 24/7 internet radio station that has been around since 2014. When I was a teenager, I started out being a record collector strictly devoted to oldies music. And then about 1980, my hometown had just a couple of stations that were on in my house, and they both were adult contemporary stations. So I was already, familiar with the Melissa Manchester's and the Pure Prairie Leagues of the day, and I had a what was to be a stepbrother. It didn't turn out that way, unfortunately, but he introduced me to some harder stuff like Queen and AC/DC and Judas Priest. I had a couple of neighbors that introduced me to Rush and all of the new wave of British heavy metal bands that were out at the beginning of the 80s. And then MTV came around. And during my late teens into most of my 20s, I had mostly second and third shift jobs. So whenever I came home from work, I would turn MTV on, and it turned out that that was the best time of the day to watch the channel because that's when they would show some of the more obscure acts, some of the ones who are only going to be destined for minor charting or not charting at all. And I fell in love with a lot of those acts. And even when MTV in the late 80s, say, sometime in the second half of 87, when that game show Remote Control came on, uh, that kind of upset me a little bit because it was cutting into the time that the channel was airing music videos. But, I got over it, kept on watching. And then probably, I'd say it was 1992. That was probably the last hurrah, as far as I'm concerned, for the classic years of MTV. 92, they spent practically the entire year airing a lot of 80s retrospective shows that VJ John Stewart hosted a lot of them. And then the Real World came on. Didn't like that. Didn't like Liquid Television. Beavis and Butthead was, cute at first, but it grew stale to me pretty quickly. And then January 1st of 1993, MTV declared that they were undergoing a new music revolution, and I didn't get it at the time. It just didn't sound good to me at all. And so I started reaching out to various trading networks because I was missing the videos that I had seen back in the early 80s. About summer of 82 was the first time I started watching MTV. And I remembered a lot of the one shot artists. And it took me a while to find people who remembered them. And so the trading began. I became friends with somebody from the New Orleans area who ended up being friends with a guy who ended up running a reissue label called Rubellin Remasters. These two guys were very new wave intensive, and so they introduced me to a lot of acts. And I thought I would never become a new wave fan, but I found a lot of the stuff to be very innovative. And then I came across a guy who is a member of the Awfully Awesome 80s Facebook group, who I traded a lot of metal videos with for many years. And once the 90s ended and we got to the early 2000s with the Napster revolution, um, things changed quite a bit. And so I was doing a lot of CD hunting out in the wild. Found a lot of really obscure titles for only a buck or two. And then I started coming up with the idea. I got this love for all this obscure music, and I think there are others that would like to hear it. So did some searching around on the internet and found a company that could offer licensing for practically next to nothing. Because of the early 2010s, there was this thing called the Small Webcasters Agreement, and took major advantage of that. And even though it ended in 2015, I soldiered on, and fortunately, I've had some great supporters over the years that have kept the station going. So here we are in 2026. I'm looking to add hundreds more titles this year. Looking to put in sound bites from classic commercials from the '80s, as well as movie quotes, quotes from famous television shows, and even some commercials for some famous record albums. Adam, I'm sure that you're familiar from your television viewing days. You remember when there were commercials from like the big chains like Camelot Music and Tower Records and Sam Goody.
Oh,
They
of
would
course.
say, they'd say like 5.98 or 6.98 on sale now. So, and also I'm doing more showcases, for record labels, and I'm also looking to do kind of an unorthodox countdown show. I mean, there's all kinds of stations out there that already do top 20s or top 40 retrospectives, and I find that those shows contain songs that you're already hearing several times a day. So what I was thinking about doing is something along the lines of the Forgotten 50, where I'll take some trade magazines top 100, and I'll handpick what I consider to be 50 that deserved a little more love. Some of them will be known to some people, but I just think that it's their time to be in the spotlight. If that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a great idea. And, I was thinking about, that chronologically we could go through the years and pick some of the forgotten gems. But if you have a better idea, if you want to go ahead and talk about some of these that you have in mind, possibly, we could go ahead and throw a couple of titles out there if you have something on the top of your head, or we can just maybe just go down through the years, however you want to do this.
Yeah, I mean, every '80s fan has probably their own list of what they consider to be forgotten heroes, and I just want it to be known that whatever people's preferences are for forgotten heroes, I am very open-minded, more than willing to play them as long as they're not proclaiming death and destruction to the world, or having profanity every other word. So yeah, I have a few names in mind. It doesn't have to necessarily be in chronological order.
Oh, okay. Well, I was yeah, in 1980 I was looking at the Pop Annual, the Billboard Pop Annual, which is one of the I consider it to be the Bible of those
Right.
times.
Yep.
And there are some titles that just jump right out at me that I'm sure you're familiar with. Like one of the first ones was, and this was, a huge hit at the time, the summer of 1980, "Tired of Toeing the Line" by Rocky Burnett, which is one of those that one hit wonder, the son of Johnny Burnett, who did "You're 16, You're Beautiful, and You're Mine." Back way back in the late 50s, early 60s. I can't remember the exact year for that one, but later remade by Ringo Starr, of course. So yeah, that's one that comes to mind, along with like "Let's Get Serious" by Jermaine Jackson is another one that I see that just jumps right out at me. Written by Stevie Wonder. You hardly ever hear that one. maybe How Do I Make You by Linda Ronstadt, one of her lesser. And I don't know if that's a remake, but she was so known for doing remakes. I don't think that's a remake unless I
Well,
missed the original.
at the time, Linda was trying to be the next Pat Benatar, so to speak. And I actually like that album. What was that called? Mad Love.
I think so. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and that album also had a remake of "Hurt So Bad."
Yes, yes, it did. There was a remake there, and that was for sure. Is that the same album that had her remake of Just One Look? I can't remember, but maybe that was the year before. I can't
No,
remember.
just one look was on the "Living in the USA"
That's
album.
right. Yes, yes, the year before, year prior. I get those confused because it was all pretty close together there in the time frame. But yeah,
The
hold
old,
on to my. Oh, go ahead.
the other hit off of Mad Love, I believe, was "I Can't Let Go," which
Yeah, that's right.
the Hollies had done.
That is correct. Yes, very, very good. Yeah, Hold
And
On to My
rock.
Love by Jimmy Ruffin was one that jumped
Oh
out at
yeah,
me. That was another one written by the Bee Gees. We were talking about famous songs that were penned by famous authors. that's that's another one.
yeah. That Ruffin track is a bit difficult to get. And yeah, he was the one who had done "What Becomes of the Broken Hearted" back in the mid '60s.
Yep, yeah, that one's still pretty well known. But Hold On to My Love is one of those I remember fondly when it came out, and in the spring of that year. And yeah, and going through here, there are some other ones that the Carole King, she remade her own composition, One Fine Day, which you don't ever hear her version of One Fine Day from the summer of '80.
It
But
went
I
top 15.
Right, yeah, it's absolutely, yeah, that's another one. And and there I'm just glancing right here at a few things that jump out at me. Deja Vu by Dionne Warwick. That was from early in the year. It was the same album, I believe, the comeback album that had I'll Never Love This Way Again. I think that's the same album, or
Oh,
maybe.
geez, my AC station used to play those two songs into the ground.
Yeah, those are and I'm Alive by ELO from Xanadu, which is one of the lesser known tracks from Xanadu. Unless you're a big fan of the film, you would know it. But yeah, those are
And all over the world.
all over the world. Yes, and The Empire Strikes Back by Miko, another one from his attempt to recapture that success that he had with the number one
Star
record,
Wars.
the Star Wars. Yeah, back just a couple of years prior. And I Pledge My Love by Peaches and Herb is one that I always thought deserved a lot more love than it got. It was they were riding high in 1979 with Reunited and Shake Your Groove
Shake Your
Thing.
Groove thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then I Pledge My Love was the following year, top 20 hit, but just same songwriters. I believe it was Freddie Perrin and the other guy. I can't think of his name right now, but the same ones, I believe. But this is I always yeah, Dino Fakakis and Freddie Perrin. That's Frakaris, I mean. And so they were yeah, that's another one. And then When I Wanted You by Barry Manilow is another one that one of his lesser known you don't ever hear. I hear it very rarely anyway. And the
Right.
only Fleetwood Mac song that I know of that's not in heavy rotation, Think About Me, which is
Yes.
yeah, that's one that just for some reason never gets played unless you play it. And
Yes, I do actually. Yep.
yeah, I was going to say I believe I've heard it there. And so those are a few from 1980, the first year of the decade that just kind of jump out at me, and as I go through here, that I think warrant more attention. And I'll let you, if you want to add something here, because I don't want to monopolize this conversation.
No, no, that's fine. Yeah. So my forgotten heroes. I think a lot of people have listened to me over the years. Know what my first loves are, and one of them being Canadian bands. And certain West Coast artists, I think, were criminally forgotten about. Let me see if I can come up with. Let's start off with a West Coast band. This one was from 1988. They were a trio, and they were called PM. And PM stood for Peter Mayer. And he and his two bandmates were part of Jimmy Buffett's Coral Reefer Band. And they released a self-titled debut on Warner Brothers that was probably the epitome of smooth as silk, West Coast soft rock. They got some airplay on VH1, MTV, passed over them because they didn't think they stood a chance, and it turned out that they were right in that respect. But the album kind of grew a cult following over the years, and it sets you back about $40 to $70 for the CD these days. And the song that was pushed to radio and VH1 was a song called "Piece of Paradise."
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, it's not quite the soft rock that you heard back in '80 or '81, but it I don't know how else to describe it. It's very stylish. It's very soothing to the ears. So I think it still fits the definition.
Oh, very good. Yeah, it's good to, and I'm always interested in uh hearing new old music, I call it, because it's
Right.
things that I didn't hear when it was originally released, but I like to be constantly discovering new things, and that's one that I would file under newly discovered old music. And so yeah.
And then another one that I've always been a big fan. I was always surprised that they didn't have a big hit. And yeah, they had one album that took about 10 years to go platinum, but for the most part, they were kind of on the third tier behind most of the other hard rock bands, and that would be Zebra.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice.
Yeah, Who's Behind the Door was played quite a bit on MTV during '83, but it only got to about, I think it was 61 or so on the charts. And, they've kept it going, still the same original lineup. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary, and they're, talking about putting out a new album. So, but yeah, they're kind of compared to Led Zeppelin, which the lead singer Randy Jackson kind of alternates between his own style and sometimes he'll shriek like Robert Plant did in say Immigrant Song. And actually, he's done Randy Jackson has done some solo shows where he concentrates mostly on Zeppelin songs, and the keyboard player has been in a Zeppelin tribute band called Kashmir. And yeah, I followed them since since '83, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Let's see. Another one that I always liked was Kaylee from Marillion. That came out in 1985. They're an English band that can't remember if it was Kerrang or Cream. One of those metal magazines said that they were in the best metal band poll, and I never, I always laughed when I saw that because they're strictly a progressive band. And Kaylee was probably the greatest song that Phil Collins never recorded. Because if you listen to Fish, the lead singer of the band, or at least he was the lead singer of the band at the time, it's his resemblance to Phil Collins is just uncanny.
Yeah, and this being the mid '80s, that was the time to sound like Phil Collins. So
Right.
if you were going to sound like anybody, that was the yeah, for sure.
But that song only got to I think around '74. But
Mm.
MTV did give it some love though.
Yeah, the I always talked to a friend of mine who was he wasn't much of an MTV watcher. He's a little bit older than myself, about 12 years older than me, and and he was in college at the time, but just kind of ignored MTV. And I always tell him that the songs that charted and the songs that charted on MTV were two different types of charts because there might be something in heavy rotation on MTV that you never heard on the radio. I think about it. Even O's and AEIOU, sometimes Y is one of those that comes to mind. And there are
Yeah,
other
I think
ones.
Beavis and Butthead picked on that in one episode. I remember that.
Yes, they did. Well, we'll go to 1981, just throw out a few titles here. Here's
Uh-huh.
a number one record that I think is, I would say it's kind of a forgotten gem. It sold a lot of copies. I bought one of them. I can tell you that with my hard-earned money. The Stars on 45 medley from the summer of 1981. And that's one of those that just you never hear that on traditional oldies outlets. And so that's one that definitely comes to mind for me. And
Yeah, it
there's
kind of it, it
yeah,
kind of wore out. It kind of wore out its welcome, I think. Yeah,
yeah, there were a lot of copycats. I guess you would say that it started this kickstarted this medley craze that we had.
right, right.
And we did Hooked on Classics, and then they did. There was even the Elvis medley, which did not hit the top 40, but it got in the 60s or something. I think
Yeah, and there
maybe
was
lower.
a Beach Boys medley,
Yes, that actually charted. That did I think like top 15, and there was a Beatles medley, Beatles
movie
mystery
medley.
movie
Yeah,
medley.
movie.
That's what it was.
Yep.
Yeah. And so there were quite, and there was even Hooked on Swing by Larry Elgart, which got to like number 31 or something like that. So there was a medley craze. And then the Stars on 45 came back 2 years later, or the next year rather, and did a Stevie Wonder tribute to Stevie Wonder,
Steve.
which actually made the
Right.
top 30. And that's pretty good, actually. I like that. That doesn't get much. And then, let's not forget about Miko and his Pop Goes the Movies medley. So
Yeah.
that's another one that I have a fondness for. I actually had the LP of that one, which was uh, basically 22 minutes on each side of movie themes. The 45 was like 3.5 minutes or something. So it's a treat if you're a movie fan and a music fan. I always enjoyed that. But Young Turks is another one that comes up. Rod Stewart. That's kind of forgotten in his list. When you're thinking Rod Stewart hits, you don't think about Young Turks. And so
Or Tonight
that's
I'm Yours.
exactly, yeah. Those are a few there. Hearts by Marty Balin is pretty well one of those I think gems from the summer of 1980 that doesn't get talked about. Of course, he was the former lead singer for Jefferson Starship, trying to go out on his own around that time.
Well,
And
Hearts gets played a lot on Sirius XM's The Bridge, I've noticed.
oh, okay. So I haven't listened to them lately, so I could.
Yeah, I think
Um,
one that would qualify more than Hearts would be the follow-up, which was a song called Atlanta Lady.
Atlanta Lady, yes, yes, I do
Yeah,
remember that. Yes,
yeah.
yep, I would agree.
Which pretty much sounded like a if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of song. Yeah.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, and then we had what about the comeback of Gary U.S. Bonds, backed by Bruce Springsteen? This little
This little
girl.
girl. Yep.
This is another one of those that doesn't get a lot of play. Or Somebody's Knocking. This was a genuine one-hit wonder by Terry Gibbs, who's a country crossover artist. And I had
I
a
remember seeing her on Solid Gold.
Yes, I do too, actually. And I still, but every time I hear that song, it just brings back a fond memory of that time, the spring of '81. Just, I don't know, it just elicits all kinds of pleasant memories for me. And that's another one. It's Now or Never. Of course, this was when
John
John
Schneider.
Schneider was riding high on his fame from the Dukes of Hazzard, and he decided to venture out and try to do the music thing, as it were. And he actually did pretty well on the country charts, but as far as pop goes, this was his only pop top 40 hit. So, yeah,
Went
that's
top 15.
yes, absolutely. And another one from that year that I think is a beautiful song, Time by the Alan Parsons Project, although this may get some play on some of the, like you're talking about, like The Bridge. I'm not sure, but I have a real fondness for that one too. So, yeah, those are a few that come to mind from 1981. And Winning by Santana is another one. Don't really hear that one all that much. Or Sweet Baby by Stanley Clarke and George Duke. So those are a few
Oh,
that,
yeah, that's the epitome of smooth. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. So if we're talking, kind of forgotten gems from the early '80s, and of course, anytime you're going to a new decade, the decade doesn't really find its footing until about a year or two in, because you're kind of still lost in the early '80s stuff. Kind of reminds you of the late '70s, I guess, and then we finally start getting into the new wave in the year around 1982 with some of the stuff that was charting then.
Probably as far as soft rock is concerned, one of my all-time favorites was the top 20 hit in '82 from Greg Gidry, "Going Down."
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, he was an unfortunately he took his own life, and it didn't.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, it was garage or something. Yeah, the
Yeah,
fire.
absolutely. Yeah, it was just
Yeah,
awful.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was I didn't find out about that until years later. But yeah, I agree. That's a really good song that has a nice sound.
And
Uh,
you never hear it anymore except in a re-recorded version. And I don't even think Sirius XM realizes that that wasn't the original that they're playing.
I think you're right. Yeah, yeah. The original was on Columbia, of course, and I think I have a promo copy of it around here somewhere on 45.
Yeah.
So yeah, and of course, one of the I don't think this was the last number one instrumental, but it was I think it was second to last was the Chariots of Fire titles by Vangelis. I think the
Yep.
Miami Vice theme was the last number one instrumental, but this was certainly one of the final ones. And it doesn't when you think of the 1980s, Chariots of Fire titles is not one that normally comes up, although it's pleasant to hear it, and I think it's somewhat forgotten, even though the film won Best Picture. So it still has its place in pop culture history, but still, yeah, that's another one that I think about. Make a Move on Me, the follow up to Physical by Olivia Newton-John. Of course, Physical was huge, but the follow up was pretty big too. But it got to number five, but kind of forgotten, I think, a little bit, maybe.
Or
It's not
Heart Attack.
Heart Attack. That's an excellent choice. Yeah, I was going to mention that. I think that was later on towards the end of the year, and so yeah, the that and let's see, 65 Love Affair by Paul Davis is I don't know if that's I would say that's probably a forgotten gem. It was you don't hear it in heavy rotation, that's for sure. And of course, the other one he had from the same year, Love or Let Me Be Lonely, which is of course a remake of the old chestnut from the '60s.
Friends of Distinction.
Friends of Distinction, yes. And so those are, and Love's Been a Little Bit Hard on Me is another one. Juice Newton, that brings back fond memories from the summer of 1982. And that's, again, The Sweetest Thing and Queen of Hearts. I think those are kind of
I love
sort of,
I love the music video for Love's Been a Little Bit Hard on Me,
I
where
do
it's
too.
poor
Yeah,
poor girl, poor girl.
yeah, yep, agreed. And then America had to come back with You Can Do Magic in the late summer. And that's another one that doesn't really, and they had one more. What was the other one?
The Border.
The Border. That's it. It was on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, those are two that don't get really talked about. And of course, if we really want to talk '80s nostalgia, we can't have a conversation without Pac-Man Fever. I don't know if this is a gem or not, if you want to call this, but it's certainly a forgotten song that I was having to explain to my partner. She didn't remember it when it was on the radio, even though she's not too much younger than myself, but she somehow missed it. And I said, "Oh yeah," and there was a follow-up, "Do the Donkey Kong."
I was about to say, after hearing "Do the Donkey Kong," you'll say, okay, Pac-Man Fever had some merit to it.
Yes. Yeah, that was a masterpiece compared to Do the Donkey Kong. That's right. And then we had, like Hall and Oates did it in a minute. That's not one that instantly comes to mind when you think of Hall and Oates, but it was pretty big at the time, but kind of not one of their top tier songs that people think of when they think of
or
Hall and
or
Oates.
your imagination was a top 40 hit also.
Yes, yes, yes. Good choice. And Take It Away, Paul McCartney. That top 15, but again, not. It was a big hit, a big year for Paul McCartney. He had a couple of duets that were big that year, but that one's kind of forgotten. As is Supertramp's "It's Raining Again," which uh, was I thought a great song that I always enjoyed hearing. That doesn't really get played very much
Yeah,
anymore.
and the video for "It's Raining Again" would be the male counterpart to "Love's Been a Little Bit Hard on Me."
Yes, absolutely. That's very true. And of course, the Oak Ridge Boys had two country crossovers that year with Bobby Sue and Elvira. And
Hmm.
so those were, again, when you're thinking the '80s, you don't instantly go to the Oak Ridge Boys. So yeah, these are, and Should I Do It by the Pointer Sisters is one of their lesser known titles from their catalog, from their
Or
top 40
American
hits.
Music would be another.
Yes, another good one. Yes. So yeah, and then we had another country crossover, "Nobody" by Sylvia. That was another one that top 15 there. And Sheena Easton with "You Could Have Been With Me." That's not really something that gets
Fantastic song.
absolutely, absolutely, and it doesn't get played very often. And then we had a group called Steel Breeze that had "You Don't Want Me Anymore." And then they
Or
had "Dreaming Is Easy"
Dreaming
was
is easy.
right,
Yep.
yeah, later on in the year. So those are two. So yeah, those are a few. And then Kansas had a semi comeback hit. They hadn't had anything for a couple of years that was substantial until "Play the Game Tonight." So those are a few I think forgotten gems from '82. And let's just kind of gives you an example, some examples of what we're talking about here, and all these songs that just were pretty pretty substantial at the time, but this for whatever reason not getting played in regular rotation, and
It
it's
it it took MTV a year to year and a half, I would say, to really get its footing. And once it did, it was like night and day. You compare the Hot 100 of June of '82 to June of '83, and it's a heck of a difference.
absolutely, yeah. I remember, speaking of MTV, here's one that was a huge hit in the summer of 1983, moving on to the next year, "Putting on the Ritz." And I always wondered why this video was not played on MTV. And I knew there was a video of it because I would see clips of it on Casey's Top 10 when Casey Kasem would do his video countdown every weekend. It was a syndicated show, and I would watch it, and I would see clips of this video. And I'm like, why are they not showing the video for "Putting on the Ritz"? And I found out years later it's because he's in blackface in the video. And that's
Oh yeah,
why, yeah, you
yeah.
can't, they would not run the "Putting on the Ritz" video. And even though the song was a huge hit, and my sister, I remember her teasing me at one point. She said, "I saw the video this afternoon for "Putting on the Ritz," and I knew she was lying because I knew it was. So I did get to see it when the wonderful invention known as YouTube was it was, and I finally got to see it in its entirety, for better or worse.
Well, you remember when VH1 in the early '90s was doing their '80s shows? They would play it once in a while.
Oh wow, that's something because at the time of its release, it was not played. We never saw it. So I guess maybe they've maybe times have changed. Maybe people realize it has a nostalgic feel, and it's a reflection of times that prejudices from an earlier era or something. But yeah, there were some interesting songs from '83 as well. "Stray Cat Strut," of course, "Mr. Roboto." Then we have their "After the Fires" remake of "Der Kommissar," which was a previous hit by Falco in Germany,
Right.
not so much here. But yeah, and then we had "Too Shy" by Kajagoogoo. We're getting into the new wave stuff as we go here with some of these. And yeah, and then Men at Work had a couple of hits that really, like "Overkill" doesn't is not really thought of. You think of "Down Under," but you don't think of "Overkill" or "It's a Mistake" or "Dr. Heckle and Mr.
Heckle and
Jive."
Mr. Jive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and those were all pretty substantial. I say substantial over and over again, but that is a recurring word here because these songs were at the time heard. "Solitaire" by Laura Branigan is another one that I think about that. You know,
Yeah. MTV never really was that kind to her either. I mean,
no,
they played Solitaire a couple of times. They played the Lucky One. Um, but other than that, I don't think they gave much love to any of her other singles.
I think you're right. Yeah, I do think you are correct. And yeah, they "Come
They had
Dancing."
they had a problem with the self control video. I remember hearing about
Oh,
that.
yes. Now, I think that was directed by William Friedkin. I want to say maybe it was a famous director who made it, and I want to say it was William Friedkin, but maybe not. But it was a major film director that made that one. I remember. Yeah, there was definitely some issues going on with that. So yeah, and there's a remake, of course. "We've Got Tonight." Kenny Rogers and Sheena Easton. They did a remake of a song that was a hit by Bob Seger just about maybe 6 years prior. It wasn't, or 5 years actually. I think it was '78. So it wasn't that long before they did the remake. But again, another one that's kind of
Yeah,
lost to
totally
this.
totally forgotten. Yep.
Absolutely, yeah. And Come Dancing by the Kinks. The Kinks hadn't had really, I think they had had one hit in the 70s, Rock and Roll Fantasy, and that was about it for a period of about 13 years. And then they had this comeback. They became MTV stars as well because the video for Come Dancing was quite popular on there, as was the follow up Don't Forget to Dance and State of Confusion, which was the title of the album. But the song never caught on the radio. I thought it was a great song, "State of Confusion" by the Kinks, and nobody.
Probably my favorite single of theirs from the '80s that just missed the top 40 was from late '84. "Do It Again."
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That's a good choice. Good choice. And we were speaking of Hall and Oates earlier. Family Man. Let's not forget about Family Man because that's another one that is kind of when you think of Hall and Oates, you don't think about Family Man, and yet it was pretty big at the time. And then we had the Eddie Rabbit Crystal Gale, another country crossover, You and I, and that's a yet another one. And so yeah, there's some interesting things from '83 here as well that I'm seeing that bring back a lot of fond memories that are. I would say some of these are gems. I would definitely say.
Yeah, I would
Um,
say that the country crossovers pretty much stopped in early '84, and with just maybe a couple of rare exceptions after that. The last one I remember, like in '84, was that duet that Kenny Rogers had with it was actually with a couple of other people. Um, the uh, the guy that did Yamo Be There with Michael McDonald, James Ingram. I can't remember the.
I get okay, 3, 2, and 1.
Yeah, so country crossovers consistently that were consistently on the charts pretty much came to an end in early '84. One of the last ones I remember was a Kenny Rogers long forgotten hit called "What About Me." It had James Ingram and Kim Carnes on it also. And after that, for the rest of the '80s, I think there were just maybe a couple of others. There was that one bop from Dan Seals and Restless Hearts. I'll Still Be Loving You. That was '87. Yeah, I actually saw them live that year in Tampa at the Lowry Park Zoo, and some up and coming female singer was also on the bill by the name of Debbie Gibson.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. She was on the way up at that point, I guess.
Yeah, only in My Dreams had just come out at that point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, she certainly had a run there, for sure. Yeah. So I guess we'll move on to 1984. Mention a couple here from that year. "Jump for My Love" by the Pointer Sisters. Pretty big hit at the time. Not really talked about now too much, I don't think. That's another one. Oh yeah, and there's let's see, "Eyes Without a Face" by Billy Idol is another one that I think is kind of somewhat forgotten. Pretty substantial. And there's the word again
Or
at the time.
or
But
Flesh for Fantasy, I think would be a better qualifier.
yeah, you're right. Or "Sweet 16," which is later in the decade, which 87 or something like that.
80,
Yeah.
87. Yep.
And if we want to go as far as the 90s, "Cradle of Love" is certainly forgotten from The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, folks.
Yeah.
So,
Must
yeah,
see viewing.
yeah, yeah, yes. Oh my goodness. Well, anyway, no More Lonely Nights is one of the ones from Paul McCartney's solo years that doesn't really get a lot of play. This was from
I like So Bad myself.
I did too. I like both of those actually. Yeah, they were both from. Were they both from? Give my regards to Broad Street. I know. No More
No,
Lonely Nights certainly was, but
no, So Bad was from the album he did previous to Give My Regards to Broad Street.
okay, the one that had Take It Away on it, I believe. Pipes of Peace,
Uh,
maybe.
Pipes of Peace. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah, which is another good song, "Pipes of Peace."
Yes.
But so, yeah, there's some good ones there. "Infatuation" by Rod Stewart. We were talking about him earlier. I think this is another one that doesn't really this and some guys have all the luck, both from 1984. Not really, not a whole lot of not heavy rotation at least. You might hear them occasionally, but certainly not in you know.
Yeah, the only other single off of that album was a remake of the Free hit "All Right Now."
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. That's actually a curio. That would be worth hearing again, I think, because yeah, that doesn't. Yeah, we will. Another one that I was just forgetting about was Olivia Newton-John. We were talking about her earlier. She was uh, kind of ending the run of her career was kind of heading towards the end as far as the pop hits. She was as far as chart success rather. Now she continued to do live shows and continued to make movies and such, but as far as her chart success, she was getting and towards the end. And then there was a Twist of Fate from the ill-fated Two of a
Two of a
Kind.
kind. Yep.
And then there was what was the follow-up? Living in Desperate Times. That's it. Yeah.
Yes.
And so yeah, and there was a lesser
And
hit.
there was one that was pretty much a hit at just only a hit on AC radio. "Take a Chance."
Take a Chance. Yeah, duet with John Travolta. Yes, yeah, that's right. And then the next year it was Soul Kiss, and that was the final top 40 hit for Olivia. So she had a 14-year chart run there. That was pretty nothing to scoff at, and certainly some big hits.
Yeah,
So
one of the CDs I lost in the fire was the '88 CD, "The Rumor."
oh yeah, that is one of those, and the rumor was played heavily in the Charlotte area when I was growing up. That's where I grew up, and we heard it on our stations around here. I was a huge fan of the 12-inch dance mix of that by Shep Pettibone. I thought it was fantastic. It had a much better beat, percussive beat than the album. It just had more punch to it, I thought. And so, not all 12-inch mixes are better than the original, but that was a case where I felt like the 12-inch version was much better. And I was just re-listening to it the other night. As a matter of fact, I was on my treadmill trying to get a few steps in, and I heard it. It popped up, and I was like, "Man, that's still good after all these years. It still works." And so Tracy Ullman's one foray into the top 40, and that was "They Don't Know," which was written by Kirsty MacColl, the late Kirsty MacColl, who actually is the one who you can hear her on the song "Baby." I'm not going to try to hit that note. Yeah,
Right,
she died tragically trying to save her children from an approaching boat. The
right. Drown. It
propeller
was
from
a
the boat, yeah,
drowning.
drowning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrific. But she was a really, really good songwriter. And the Tracy Ullman's cover of her "They Don't Know" is was a really big hit in the spring of '84 rather. That I just
And Paul McCartney was in the video at the end.
absolutely, yeah, that's a good, yeah, sure was. And Adult Education. Here's another Hall of Notes. They've got more forgotten songs in their in their top
Oh
40
yeah.
catalog than
Oh yeah.
yeah, I was just listening today, as a matter of fact, there one from '85 where they paired up with Eddie Kendricks and David Ruffin when they did
The
the
way you
live
do
version,
the
the
things
way
you
you do
do.
the things you
Yep.
do in My Girl. Yeah, I was listening to that on my walk this afternoon at work, and I thought, man, this is still pretty good. It's a nice little medley of those, late, not long before both of them would pass away. They both passed away within the next 5 to 6 years. Eddie
Right.
Kendricks and David Ruffin. So yeah, it was good to see them have one more, top 40 hit there at the towards the end of their lives. And then we have "Breaking' There's No Stopping Us" by Ollie and Jerry from Breakin', which there was a sequel before the year's end. Talk about getting things into production real quickly. So yeah, those are a few from '84. And "Don't Answer Me." I can't. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that one by the Alan Parsons Project, which is you talk about terrific videos. I think that video is phenomenal. It's an animated video, and it's just so cleverly done. I mean, I just really really love it. And
Yeah, I think that's probably my wife's favorite Alan Parsons single, actually.
Yeah, Prime Time is it was another good one. I may have heard you play that one actually. It seems like
Yeah,
recently.
yeah. Prime time was the video with the mannequins.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, it is. And well, we're going on longer than I thought we would, but maybe we can wrap this up after we'll maybe uh, go through 85, and then we can maybe do a later episode and cover the last 5 years of the 80s with some of these titles, because this is taking longer than I thought. There's a lot to talk about here.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but we'll go through 85, and then we'll save the rest for another time. But
Save it for later.
well, Part-Time Lover by Stevie Wonder is one of those that comes up that, again, number one record, but when you think of Stevie Wonder, you're thinking of a gazillion other songs he did, but not Part-Time Lover, even though it was a huge hit. And so that is,
Or what was that other one he had? Go home.
yeah, Go Home. That was the next one. And then Overjoyed. He had three great ones off of that. In a Square Circle, I think is the name of that album.
Yeah,
Um,
you don't hear those last two anymore. That's a definite.
No, no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, those are definitely not talked about for sure. And of course, the Honey Drippers, Sea of Love. This was had several of the you were talking about Led Zeppelin earlier. Several of the former members of Led Zeppelin in this this group,
Yep.
and there was a lot of to do about them getting back together for this, and it wasn't. If you were expecting a Led Zeppelin sound, you weren't going to get that with the Honey Drippers. Although it was only I think it was an EP, only four songs on that album, and but I do love Rockin' at
At midnight.
Midnight, which was the other one
Yep.
that they did, and man, those are but just and Sea of Love's a nice remake of the Phil Phillips song from the which was also done by Del Shannon.
Del
I've
Shannon
heard you
in
play
yep
that. Yeah.
early '80s. Yep.
Yeah, produced by Tom Petty, I do believe.
Yep.
So yeah, we're yeah, those are all we could go down a rabbit hole with a lot of those. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think Tom Petty was looking to have Del Shannon in the Traveling Wilburys after Roy Orbison passed away.
yeah, you're right. You're right. He was, and then tragically he passed away as well by a self-inflicted shotgun wound, which is terrible still. But yeah,
Yep.
that would have been interesting to hear how he would have sounded with the other members. It would I would have been most interested in that. So Freedom was by Wham is one of their songs that not a lot of people talk about. Kind of like The Edge of Heaven from the following year. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but those are two from the Wham catalog, and I'm Your Man. Those are three that you really don't hear. You're thinking of Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, Careless Whisper, and Everything She Wants, but you really don't hear them playing Freedom all that much. And I always thought that was a good one of their better songs that deserves more exposure. I Miss You by Climax is a ballad by they also did Meeting in the Ladies Room, which was a dance classic, but that's a
Yeah, and
ballad.
they yeah, well we could probably save it for the other next part, but yeah, they also had another top 20 hit the following year.
Yes, they did. They sure did. Yeah, we will definitely hold that one for the next one because that's when you get into movie soundtracks, which there was quite a few of those in the later part of the 80s hits from movie soundtracks. And
And I can also mention a couple more of my unsung heroes from the first half of the decade.
okay, sure.
Uh, yeah, it was probably a year and a half that they were, getting a lot of love from MTV. This is probably, I would say, the summer of '82 to maybe the fall of '83. I think it was probably because the British were about the only ones who were pumping out music videos on a regular basis, and so MTV needed stuff to play, so they figured, let's get these British bands a chance. But back to what I was going to discuss at the beginning of the conversation, as far as how I fell in love with new wave. Probably one of the first acts of from the new wave genre that I got very intrigued by was Altered Images. They were a band that was led by a very cute female singer named Claire Grogan, who was in a film called Gregory's Girl. I don't know if you've heard of that or not.
I lost my audio there for a second. Sorry about that. Yes,
Well,
I am familiar with Gregory's Girl. Yes, absolutely.
she's her voice is not for everybody. It's kind of squirrelish, but the music was pretty solid, and you can't feel nothing but happiness after hearing a lot of their tunes. But they were big in the UK, but they just unfortunately never caught on over here. One of the members went on to Hip Sway, which had a one hit over here in the top 20 in '87 called the Honey Thief.
Oh, yes, I remember it well.
Yeah, and that same member also went on at the end of the '80s to a group called Texas, who were kind of a Scottish pop band with a country twang. They had a minor hit called "I Don't Need a Lover," and they were female led. Don't know if you remember them or not, but if not, I would recommend checking them out. And let's see what else. Yeah, I have a upcoming record label showcase for IRS Records, and one of the acts I'm going to feature on the show is a band called Torch Song. And one of the members was a guy named William Orbit, who has gained a lot of notoriety in the remix field.
Oh, yes.
Uh, he remixed some of Madonna's '90s material, like "Justify My Love" and "Erotica," and a lot of stuff on the "Ray of Light" album. And yeah, they had a song called "Don't Look Now," which is just absolutely incredible. It's available on YouTube. I would highly recommend checking that out. It's just very complex, but it's got a driving beat to it. It certainly won't lose your interest.
I'd totally forgotten about William Orbit. Yeah, that's I'm glad you brought him up. Yeah, because he was there for a while. He had his moment, for sure, with the his connection to Madonna. Yeah,
And
that's
then one other I can mention is a group called the Untouchables. They were a early ska band with some occasional reggae influences, and but they were big fans of the '60s R&B and Northern Soul. They were fans of a lot of the records that were big in the UK clubs that just never really saw the light of day here. They had a song called "Free Yourself," and they also remade a song called "I Spy for the FBI," which was a non-charter in the U.S. and '66 for a guy named J-Mo Thomas. But yeah, you hear their stuff, and especially "Free Yourself," you'll be dancing in no time.
it's great. I'm so glad you're suggesting this stuff because I mean, these are these acts are, they it's like I said, it's just so great to discover things that you might have missed in the past. And this is the thing I miss about going to record stores because you used to have these conversations with people in the stores, and now we're all in our little bubble and we don't have these conversations anymore. And I think that's one of the beauties of doing these things is that we can we can grab our notepad and as we listen and write them
Oh,
down
yeah.
and
I know. Back in those days, I used to go into a record store with a list of maybe 4 or 5 titles I was looking for, and about 4 or 5 hours later, I'd be coming out with about 20. So,
that's right. I had that experience many, many, many times. Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Well, just a couple more we'll talk about from 1985. And this is one of the songs from Foreigner that never gets talked about. That was Yesterday, which I think is a really solid song that I just love by Foreigner that never hear that unless you are playing it, or occasionally Barry Scott will play it on his Lost 45 show, but not very often.
I
That's for
met
sure.
uh, I met Barry once.
Oh wow. Well, okay. Well, he's been a guest here before, a couple of years back. But what was your and we might have talked about this. I can't remember, but it bears repeating. So I'll let you tell the.
Let's see. We were on this it was a cruise ship in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, on the
Hmm.
seacoast, and yeah, he happened to be the DJ on the ship, and so yeah, he and I started talking shop, and I told him about my station, but I don't think it really sunk in. But I was saying, well, let's see if do you know this song or that song? He knew them all, but he had his playlist pretty well set. He really didn't want to branch out too much from that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I knew him because the the oldie station in town would occasionally play his. He had like a Lost 45 at either noontime or 1 in the afternoon. I can't remember, but
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was a thrill meeting him. Yeah,
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was. We had a lovely conversation. It was great. He doesn't do many interviews, and it took a little coaxing to get him to come on. And then once he came on, we it was great. We just and I really enjoyed hearing his stories of the interactions with these people who made these records. And he had some really interesting stories. Some of the people were great, and some of them were not so great. And he was open to telling the stories about both the wonderful ones and the not so wonderful ones. So yeah,
right.
and that does happen. So yeah, we'll just mention a couple more here. "Take Me With You" by Prince, and "Sugar Walls," which is obviously has a lot of Prince connections there because I think Sheena Easton
Right.
and Prince were having they were having maybe a romantic fling of some sort, but it obviously sounds like Prince, and it's produced by Prince, I do believe. So yeah, and then "Sleeping Bag" by ZZ Top from the fall of the year, which was a great song, I thought, that just really doesn't get a lot of play. They're too busy playing "Sharp Dressed Man" to play "Sleeping Bag," but it's really a great song and still has a driving beat that I really enjoy.
And stages and Rough Boy also deserve some love.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe even "Velcro Fly."
Velcro.
Yeah, and then "Along Comes a Woman" was a more up-tempo song by Chicago at a time when they were mostly doing ballads, and that came out of left field. That wasn't there was actually a dance single for that, a 12-inch dance single and that was at a time, like I said, most of what they were doing were "You're the Inspiration" and things like that, and "Hard
I
Habit
think
to Break."
Along Comes a Woman. The video was the last one that Peter was in.
I believe you're right. Yep, I think that is correct. And then we had the talking about instrumentals. I think, as we said earlier, 1985 was one of the final years for instrumentals. We had Axel F., the Miami Vice theme, and the Love theme from St. Elmo's Fire by David Foster, which is
Right.
another one of those. And we had a final top 40 entry for Kim Carnes. I don't think she had another one after this. "Crazy in the Night," barking at airplanes. I think that was the final one for her. And then we talk about videos we loved. Who doesn't love this one? I haven't met anybody who doesn't, and that's a "Cry" by Godley and Cream, which is one of the
Yeah,
most
morphing.
unique videos of it. Just the creativity involved in that video is just still amazes me at a time when some of this technology was in its infancy, and the way they're able to meld these faces together. It's
But the thing is, yes, it was definitely different from what was out that year, but they weren't the first to use that process though. Um, what was it about 4 years previous to that? King Crimson had a video. Um, what was it called? Heartbeat, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But yeah, it has a woman in it and a couple other people, and their faces morph into each other for probably a good 10 seconds or so.
Yeah, that's I need to go back and rewatch that one because I think I saw that. I had completely forgotten about that one until you just mentioned it. So yeah.
That was when Adrian Belew was in the group.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, we'll talk just a couple more titles, and then we'll end this conversation for now. 19 by Paul Hardcastle, which was an interesting top 40 hit for sure because they took audio from a Vietnam documentary and added a dance beat to it. Who would have thought?
Yeah, because 19 was the typical age of a new recruit or something. Was that
Yeah,
the
that's right. The
yeah,
typical age
yeah,
of the combat soldier was 26 in Vietnam. It was 19 in Vietnam.
yeah.
It was no, 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 19. You don't need me to reiterate that, I'm sure, but still. And then we had a solo hit by Mick Jagger, "Just Another Night," which doesn't get a lot of play, and then one more from the a favorite film of many people who grew up in the '80s, "Never-Ending Story" by Lamal, who was the lead singer of Kajagoogoo, and this song's produced by Giorgio Moroder. I have a fondness for it. It takes me back to a
Yeah.
nice place, and that's another one. So anyway, those are a few of the forgotten gems from the first half of the decade of the 1980s. Like I said, we can pick this up at a later time, but it's just been a pleasure having you on again. And we urge everybody to listen and interact with the Awfully Awesome 80s and the Retro Attic, and maybe throw Gilbert a shekel or two if you feel it on your heart, because he can always use a little financial support to keep these things going, because
Yeah,
it doesn't
the
happen for free.
yeah, I should reiterate that Awfully Awesome 80s is a bit tricky as far as the website address. You would automatically think that it ends in 80s, but it's actually spelled out. It's three words: Awfully Awesome, EIGHTIES.com. And the Retro Attic, which is the 50s to 70s channel, is Retro Attic rareoldiesradio.com.
Excellent, excellent. And now that everybody has the correct info, go on there, tune it in, and listen to it, and give it your support because it's great stuff.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time, Adam.
Oh yeah.